Lassiter with you until, about 4 o'clock? Sure, give or take a couple of hours. It's a strange business, and you never quite know what's going to happen. On the Talk of Tampa Bay, WFLA, and I'm here every weekday, Monday through Saturday, just talking away and having a grand old time chatting with the friends and neighbors in the Tampa Bay area. Isn't talk radio marvelous? We'll break the program into a couple of different segments today. In the first segment, we have a guest. His name is Bradley Smith from the Institute for Historical Review. Bradley, what brings you to the area?
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
We're talking on the telephone. I'm in Los Angeles here.
Well, I meant your ideas, really, as what I should say. You're correct. We're in L.A. Very good, Bradley. You got me on that one.
What is fraudulent in the story, apparently, is that, one, there is not a single proof that the German state had a program or a policy to exterminate the Jews of Europe, and there is not a single proof that homicidal poison gas chambers, in fact, were used.
Are you suggesting, Bradley, that the furnaces, which are still in existence today, were used perhaps in, handicraft classes for the Jews so that they could bake their pottery in them?
No, for the crematoria, which existed in nearly all of the camps, were there for health reasons, and what they did is they burned anyone who died in the camp was cremated. For instance, there's probably a crematoria in Tampa, but that doesn't mean that the city of Tampa is exterminating.
No, but nor is the crematorium a block, square either.
Well,
it's not a massive
when you start looking
oven.
at the crematoria, you find out that they aren't that large. But
and again, if Stalin was a butcher, and I believe that he was, how does that somehow make it kind of okay that Hitler was?
But I'm not.
You're comparing apples and oranges.
You want me to say that, but I don't say that because
you imply it in your literature, Bradley. Maybe you won't say it on a talk radio show because you know what kind of reaction it would bring. But nonetheless, for all of the people that send you money, the implication is as clear as can possibly be.
Well, it is to you, but you're drawing the wrong implication. Let me tell you in all good faith, you're drawing the wrong implication. My politics, for instance, I've never been very political, but when my play was published here in Los Angeles a couple years ago, the drama critic for the Los Angeles Times described me as an anarchist libertarian. If you think that men who can be described as anarchist libertarians have a nostalgia for the totalitarian regime of the Nazis, then you really have your categories confused.
Well, perhaps you don't have a nostalgia to go back to the good old days of Nazi Germany, but I do think that there is a very serious problem here with your view toward the Jews.
Well,
it seems to gall the hell out of you. It seems to gall the hell out of you that the Jews wish to remember the Holocaust and wish me to remember it and wish you to remember it as well. That seems to gall you, Bradley, doesn't it?
If the Holocaust is worth remembering and never forgetting, then it's worth telling the truth about. That's what the revisionist critique of Holocaust orthodoxy is all about. Let's get the lies. Let's get the lies out of the Holocaust story. Then let's
set the record straight. How many Jews did Hitler kill?
We don't know.
How many do you think he killed?
Nobody knows.
That's right. Nobody knows. The 6 million is a good guess.
We think that the idea that 6 million Jews were killed during World War II is an irresponsible exaggeration.
I mean, I believe even Elie Wiesel will say that it could have been 9 million or it could have been 3 million, right?
Elie Wiesel will say anything. Elie Wiesel actually claims that there is eyewitness evidence that in order to protest what the Germans did against them, there's eyewitness evidence that Jewish corpses have been known to spurt geysers of blood from their graves for months after they were buried. Elie Wiesel is an intellectual fraud, and I have a substantial amount of a substantial number of ways to document this, and I'd like to give you a couple of them right now since you introduced the subject.
Well, I'll tell you what, let me ask you to hold them. I've got to take a break. It'll include a couple of commercials and a very brief news summary. We'll be back in about 2.5 minutes. Let me put you on hold. My guest, Bradley Smith, for the Institute for Historical Review. I'm Bob Lassiter. It's 12:31 the time. I'm Bob Lassiter. My guest on the long-distance line is Bradley Smith from the Institute for Historical Review. Bradley, you're still there?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. We were about to get into the topic of Elie Wiesel before we took the break.
Well, listen, this is one of the real problems that I've had to face. I've done about 90 of these radio broadcasts now.
Is that all?
Oftentimes these survivors will come on the show, and they'll say, well, this such and such happened to me, and sometimes the story will be, it sounds to me like it's kind of a weird story, and the host will say, there's your proof, there's the proof that such and such happened. But I have to point out that not all Holocaust survivors tell the truth.
Well, may I ask?
The Jewish community is just like the rest of us. They produce a certain number of nincompoops and liars, just like Germans and Americans and French.
Nincompoops and liars, little old ladies, retired dressmakers with tattoos on their arms who are now, pushing 70 years old. What possible motive, Bradley, for somebody like that coming on the show against you?
Well, I can't judge the motive of people. However, the archive director of Yad Vashem in Jerusalem, Yad Vashem being the central documentary center for the Holocaust in the world, gave an interview to the Jerusalem Post a short while ago in which he said of the approximately 20,000 eyewitness reports in the archives of Yad Vashem where survivors have made atrocity accusations against Germans, more than half of them have been shown to be false. That is, 10,000, in this one center alone, more than 10,000 eyewitness claims of atrocities against Germans have been shown to be wrong by people who don't really want to know too much about that sort of stuff. Imagine, he says more than half. It could be 15,000 false accusations against Germans in this thing have been noted at Yad Vashem. On this side of the ocean, we have Elie Wiesel, who is our Nobel Peace Prize recipient for last year, and is the major spokesman for the Holocaust Lobby in the world. And Elie Wiesel won, since he won the Nobel Peace Prize, this is some information that your listeners might like to have. This is something that Elie Wiesel has written. He's written, quote, "Every Jew somewhere in his being should set apart a zone of hate, healthy, virile hate, for what the German personifies and for what persists in the German."
Well, do you find that bizarre from a man who suffered personally in his own family at the hands of the Germans, Bradley?
Yes, I find call to race hatred to be not bizarre, but to be.
I don't think it's not a call to race hatred. I didn't know the Germans were a race. I think it's a call to a nationalistic hatred, and which obviously I would deplore, but I can certainly understand.
Well, the thing is, I don't understand it, but the thing is,
you don't understand it. Here's a man who had members of his own family killed by the Nazis, and you can't understand why just, 40 years later he's still a little bummed out about it, Bradley?
Well, he is a little bummed out about it.
Yeah, I think he has a damn good right to be.
Is that this is a man, I don't think that very many of your listeners has known that Elie Wiesel wrote this in one of his major books.
Well, Bradley, it's at least the fourth time in the last 30 days it has been mentioned on this program alone, and I know not everybody in the universe listens to it, but it's one of those great lines. David Duke used it on this program. He's, of course, a friend of yours, right?
No, we're not friends, but he's an acquaintance.
He's an acquaintance who has also taken part in your seminars and so forth and so on, and has had dealings with the Institute for Historical Review.
Oh, we're going to get into a little guilt by association here, huh?
Well, I don't recall you sending him out of the room.
Well, why would I send him out of the room?
As a matter of fact, I recall, as I understand it, you sent him an invitation.
Everybody is welcome. Listen,
Klansmen, members of the order, these people are all welcome?
Anybody is welcome to read books written by revisionism. Do you want to censor books? Do you want to disallow people who you don't like?
Bradley, I think there's a real big difference between David Duke reading your material and you're inviting him to take part in a seminar or panel. A real big difference, isn't there, Bradley?
I don't even know what you're talking about. What seminar or panel? I don't even know what you're talking about.
I do not have it exactly in front of me, the date, the location, the topics discussed. But David Duke has taken part in programs sponsored by the Institute for Historical Review. Has he not? Has he not, Bradley?
It's regrettable that you've made two
you wish to categorically deny that David Duke has ever taken part in a program sponsored by the Institute for Historical Review. Do you wish to categorically deny that at this point?
I categorically deny that I know anything about it. I've been around for 3 years now.
So to the best of your knowledge, to the best of your personal knowledge, Bradley Smith's personal knowledge, David Duke has never been invited by the Institute for Historical Review to participate in a program.
No, that's right. Yeah, to the best of my knowledge.
It's amazing. He isn't ashamed of it. I wonder why you are.
I'm not ashamed of it. Listen, I'm not sure. I don't know what you're talking about. You'll have to, if you're going to make an accusation like that or a charge, then you should know, what you're talking about.
Well, after speaking with David Duke and his admitting to it, I just assumed that you would.
Well, what's the
so I didn't bring in with me documentation.
The revisionists want everybody to read their literature. So there's nothing to admit to. For instance, I don't deny people. I talk to anybody. And if they have ideas that don't agree with mine, I'm talking to you. Obviously, you have a lot of ideas that I don't agree with. Nevertheless, I talk to you, and I don't think it's condescending of me to do it. The thing is, I'm here to talk to everybody and anybody. I'll talk about anything, and when I find out I'm wrong about something, I'll say, listen, I'm wrong. That's all. It's not difficult for me. I've been wrong about a lot of things all my life. Now, Elie Wiesel, however, is a different sort. Elie Wiesel, doesn't really... When he wrote his book, Night, which is the book that sort of put him on the map, he really didn't mention gas chambers at Auschwitz at all, except in one rhetorical passage that was directed to God. Elie Wiesel claims in his book that the way the Germans exterminated the Jews in Auschwitz was that they burned them alive. And that the way they burned them alive is that when the Jews got off the trains at Auschwitz, they simply marched in columns. And Elie Wiesel describes how he himself, holding his daddy's hand, was marching in a column toward a great open ditch where people were being burned alive, and that as each file of Jews in the column reached the edge of the ditch, they simply leaped in order to be consumed in the flames as those who were already in the ditch were being consumed. Now, this story is so crazy on the face of it, and not only that, but is so morally corrupt in a way, that it's really amazing that not a single member of our intellectual elites, our historians or journalists, have ever questioned him on this story. We're questioning.
No, it's not amazing at all. As a matter of fact, nor is it the case. Psychologists, for example, have debated for years just what it was that caused the Jews to so peacefully, in many instances, march to their deaths. It's a topic that has been talked about for a long time and been questioned for a long time.
Usually in reference to gas chambers. Now,
no, it's also in reference to marching to be shot, too. Because I've seen the films of people standing there in line, moving up, 15, 20 at a time, standing in front of a ditch. I have seen films of this being machine gunned down. March in another 15, machine gun down, march in another 15. You've seen the films too, Bradley.
I've seen a lot of films. A lot of those films are accurate. I don't know about that one that you're talking about, but we've seen the films, for example, and this is another example of double standards involved here, is that we've seen the films of the chaotic and dreadful conditions in the camps when they were liberated in the West by the British and the Americans. When the camp system had just broken down and was in a state of utter collapse. And we've seen those dreadful scenes over and over and over again for 40 years. However, I have never seen myself a single affair on TV or in the movies about the slaughter of the Germans, German civilians in their cities, in undefended cities. I've never seen that.
Well, then great. Why don't you start up an institute that will bring that information to the American people without casting aspersions at Jews?
Well, you know what? We are doing that, and two, I always distinguish between the Holocaust Lobby, as personified in Elie Wiesel and Simon Wiesenthal and some of the organizations like the Anti-Defamation League and so forth, and the Jewish community. The Jewish community as a whole is not responsible for the degrading and disgusting claims made by individuals in the Holocaust Lobby. The Jewish community...
Degrading and disgusting claims, for example?
Certainly. Well, for instance, that there's not a single proof, for example, that the Germans cooked Jews in order to make soap from them. But there are Holocaust memorials all over the world, that in the United States even, that display, and in Jerusalem, that display bars of soap allegedly cooked from the cadavers of Jews. Now, if the claim isn't true, and there's not a single proof that it is, then the Holocaust Lobby and those people who are responsible for these disgusting displays should, if they had any sense of honor, whatever, remove them from public view. There's
well, it seems to me that it might be a little bit better and would certainly set you in a far better light that instead of coming on radio stations and making such claims that these things are false, why don't you go to the courts, get some type of an order from the court to get a sliver of the bar of soap and have it analyzed, rather than just coming on making broad-brushed claims that this is all
I'm saying
bull.
There's not a single proof.
Prove that they aren't, prove that they are not made from the remains of human beings.
Well, listen, we all have our own job. You do a radio talk show.
Have you ever gone into court and asked to subpoena?
No, I'm not a lawyer. I don't do those things. And by the way, I should point out to your listening audience, although I do an outreach program for the Institute of Historical Review, I'm not a member of the Institute. In fact, the Institute has no membership. It serves as a think tank for revisionists and as a publisher of a scholarly journal and a line of books.
And as your main source of income.
Excuse me?
And as your source of income, main source of income.
Yes, they do pay me for this. I suppose you get paid for what you do.
Yes, I do.
I get paid for what I do. Yeah, it's really remarkable, isn't it?
A marvelous country, isn't it?
And there's really not...
America.
One doesn't have to have any particular implications made from that, you know. But the thing is...
Well, I just think, what a marvelous way to go around making a living by casting aspersions at a man who suffered directly from the loss of his family. What a marvelous way to make a living, to come on a talk radio show and...
Elie Wiesel?
Yeah, Elie Wiesel, and say that, this is terrible that he's still mad about this.
Elie Wiesel contributes to the corruption of intellectual life in the United States. I'm a writer, and one of the things I'm interested in a free press, and I'm interested in the quality of intellectual life in this country. The Elie Wiesels in our country contribute to the intellectual corruption of our universities, the intellectual corruption of our students. Our students are being taught lies in a regular way, and Elie Wiesel personifies, through his talents and through his ability and through his own intellectual corruption, personifies one of the things that's wrong with the Holocaust Lobby, and it should be set right.
Okay, well, let's see if we can set some of these things right. Let me go back and ask you a question I've already asked, but we'll start it from that point. How many Jews were killed in the Holocaust?
I don't know.
Could it have been 6 million?
Very seriously doubt it. Nobody believes it.
You seriously doubt it, but therefore it could have been 6 million.
Even the Jewish historians don't really claim. Reitlinger claims 4 million, Hilberg claims 5 million. The 6 million figure is simply one of those things that...
Well, suppose for the purposes of this conversation, it was only 6,000 Jews slaughtered by Hitler. Is that okay?
No, that's not okay. How about 6,000 German babies slaughtered by American airmen? Is that okay?
Well, great. When we're doing a show about the atrocities of the American government in the Second World War, I'd be delighted to discuss that with you.
I see this in a holistic sense. And the thing is, it's very self-indulgent, I think, to consistently claim that we should pay special attention to the suffering of Jewish civilians and pay no attention to the suffering of other civilians. For example...
Well, great. We'll get to that in a moment, but I wanted to go through this little list here. So it could have been 6 million. Maybe it was less. Maybe it was more. But you just don't know.
We don't know, but the thing is, nobody believes the 6 million figure anymore.
Did the Hitler administration, did the Nazi administration in the Second World War conduct medical experiments on Jews?
Yes, some of that was done.
And these were atrocities.
It's been grossly exaggerated, but there was some of it.
A little bit of it.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit that kind of makes it okay.
The stories that you read in the press are grotesque fantasies of neurotic people in the main.
Did the Hitler administration uproot Jews, steal their property, and put them in concentration camps? Yes or no?
Yes, they did.
In massive numbers?
Yes, just like the Allies did at the close of the war. After the war was over, 12 to 15 million Germans were uprooted from their ancestral homelands in Ukraine, Russia, Lithuania, Latvia, Poland, Hungary, and forcibly, and Poland, and forcibly were forced to emigrate under military rules into West Germany, during which time more than 2 million of them died or were murdered.
Did the Hitler administration force men, women, and children to work themselves to death?
No, that's crazy.
That's crazy. That didn't happen.
Why would they do that? They wanted them to work. They didn't want them to work to death. They wanted them to work today. They wanted them to work tomorrow. Yeah.
And when they became tired and sick, of course, they were put into, nice hospitals and fed nourishing meals.
That oftentimes was the truth. It's not widely known, for instance, that Anne Frank's father, who was interned at Auschwitz, got sick at Auschwitz and was hospitalized by the camp administration and was still in the camp hospital when the Russians liberated the camp. So it is true that all of the camps had hospitals. The Germans, in the early part of the war, took care of their people fairly well. At the end of the war, it was chaos, and they couldn't take care of them anymore.
So let me see if I understand this correctly. The Germans treated the Jews with great dignity and concern for their health and well-being, but the Jews were such a sickly people that 6 million of them just died anyway.
I didn't say with great dignity. Obviously, if you force someone into a labor camp, you're not treating him with dignity. What they did is they drafted the Jews to work just like they drafted the Germans to fight. They did a lot of other things too, but essentially the thing is, it's not so horrible to have to work. You know, there were people who lived in the camps for years and who came out of the camps. It's not often remarked upon how many people survived the camps. We talk about survivors. There's still 250,000 survivors at the close now, today. Imagine how many millions there were at the end of the war. There were hundreds of thousands of survivors from Auschwitz. You know, it's... people don't stop to look at the very simple things.
12:49 the time. My guest, Bradley Smith. Bradley, I'm going to put you on hold again, take care of some business. Also, we'll open up the telephone line. Hey. Ray once, Ray twice. Ray didn't hang around. Harrison in Sarasota. Hi, you're on the air at WFLA.
Thank you, Bob. I'd like to talk to Bradley for a moment, please.
Go right ahead.
Here I am.
Bradley.
No, wait a second. I know who you are. You were banned on my show a long time ago. Bye-bye, baby. Jackie and Brandon, hi, you're on the air, WFLA.
Hi, Bob. This is Jackie.
And Brandon.
I'm 50. I watched the first newsreels that were released when I was a child. And I saw the faces of those people. And I'm telling this sucker right now, I saw the bodies being bulldozed. They were on film. I saw the films of people being lined up in front of ditches and forced to take their clothes off before they were shot. When countries are at war, there's always a chance of civilians being shot. Let's talk about the British Isles, okay, during World War II with the buzz bombs. That's a chance people take when they're at wars. We're talking here of the deliberate annihilation by a regime following a rigid philosophy of racism and deliberately setting about annihilating a large segment of human beings. How they did it is irrelevant to me. I don't care about the minor details. I mean, I'm really mad because this is one that gets my hair up. I think every generation needs to see what I saw as a child.
Well, the thing is, we love films, you know.
Maybe we can combat some of the tremendous racism in this war. These were human beings, for God's sake. That's all I have to say to him. I have nothing to discuss with him.
Would you care to comment?
Well, yeah, we're coming toward the end of the show. Is this a good time for me to give my address and so forth so that ladies like this, if they are interested in finding out information about the Holocaust that they don't have now...
Well, you can give your address, but let's at least be honest about why you're giving it out. It's not ladies like that you're appealing to.
Well,
but give out the address anyway.
Yeah, what I'm really I'm appealing to everybody. And even when people have closed minds like you can take a chance sometimes, and maybe you'll find out something that you didn't know previously. And anyone who wants to get some information about the revisionist view of the Orthodox literature on the Holocaust. And by the way, I've published a book, a small autobiography of why I got into this business called Confessions of a Holocaust Revisionist. If you want any information about any of this, you can write to me, Bradley Smith, at care of IHR, P.O. Box 1302, Torrance, California, Torrance, California, 90505, and we'll send you a little tract called 66 Questions and Answers About the Holocaust, and I'll send you a flyer on my book. You can judge for yourself.
Bill in St. Pete, hi, you're on the air at WFLA.
Hello?
Hello, Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Bill. I'm in St. Petersburg.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what I'd like to know is, where does this fellow think he gets all this so-called correct information from?
Well, there's a revisionist movement in Europe and in the United States which has a number of scholars and journalists in it, and the Institute for Historical Review is publishing a substantial amount of this material, but not all of it. And we get most of it through sources through IHR, through the Institute. In Europe, there are other publishers. In Germany, in France, there's a new revisionist.
You been to all these places and seen all this stuff?
I have not been to Europe. Is that your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have not been to Europe. The thing is, of course, you could ask the same question if historians write about the Battle of Gettysburg. Has any modern historian did they view the Battle of Gettysburg? History is actually decided not on eyewitness testimony or eyewitness viewing so much as on the documents and records of the age. And the revisionists really are only critiquing the Orthodox literature. They're taking the Orthodox literature that you can get in any of your libraries, and they're critiquing it and say, listen, these people are saying this, it doesn't seem to be so. These people are misusing this document.
So let me. I don't want you to keep rambling on, but I got to ask another question. You mentioned Gettysburg. Are you saying that Gettysburg didn't happen and it wasn't the way it was?
No, I'm not. The point of that was saying is that people often want to know if I've gone to Europe to see what's left of the various camps. And the implication being is that if I haven't seen it with my own eyes...
Now, I'm asking now, you're saying that Gettysburg is a bunch of hearsay.
No. You don't understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, but my point is, you said that all these people who are eyewitnesses, this is not, you're saying that what they saw and what they think they saw is two different things.
Well, not all of them, but a substantial portion of them. And we're trying to separate the wheat from the chaff here. Not all survivors give false testimony about their experiences, but a substantial part of them do.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this. If out of 250,000 survivors, if half of them said they saw this, and they're not lunatics, then wouldn't you think that would be the truth?
It would, but the thing is, you find out from this great body of survivors, only a handful claim to have seen the gas chambers, and these eyewitness accounts of the gas chambers can be easily have the rug pulled out from under them because most of them are so ludicrous.
But wouldn't it be hard for someone who went into the gas chamber to testify that they did?
Yes, but
I mean, that'd be kind of difficult, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah, I think so.
But the thing is, how do people who claim that they saw the gas chambers know that they were gas chambers if they haven't been in them? The thing
let me ask you this. If you weren't there, how do you know they weren't?
Excuse me?
If you weren't there, how do you know they weren't?
Well, the thing is, I may be proven
You're going on here saying what people say.
Caller, let me jump in at this point. I'm fresh out of time for this hour. Mr. Smith, would you like to stay with me into the next hour?
Well, sure.
Okay, I'll put you on hold. We'll come up to a news break. We'll be back in about 7 minutes.
The one that I'm a godmother to their child, out in the country where they couldn't find him. That man was executed, just like the rest of them. Put in an oven and executed.
You mean...
However way they did it, they did it.
You're not claiming, though, that he was burned alive in an oven?
I am telling you, I will send Bob papers, I will send you pictures, and any written...
Listen, I'd appreciate it, because you know what? I don't know it all.
Oh, you don't.
There's
You're
a lot
right.
of things I don't know. If you can send me something that's significant, for instance, if you're
I'd be glad to send you a copy of this.
Do you have photographs of the gas chamber at Dachau?
That's right. I went through the gas chambers. I saw the ovens. I saw the blood ditches and the whole damn 9 yards.
The blood ditches?
That's right, the blood ditches.
Well, they've disappeared. There's no blood ditches.
Oh, no, not now. I was there shortly after all this garbage happened.
Oh.
So, son, you don't know it all.
If you saw the gas chambers, for example...
I saw the gas chamber, I saw the ovens, and the whole 9 yards.
Why do you think that Rabbi Marvin Hunter...
And I'll tell you something else that you probably don't know.
Uh-huh.
That in the concentration camps, Germans were still living in there. They didn't have housing. Germans were living in the dirty, filthy concentration camps with the barbed wire and the whole 9 yards. And I have pictures, and I'd be more than happy to send them to Bob to dispute anything you have to say.
Let me ask you a question here. You saw what you were told that there was a gas chamber at Auschwitz, and you were sure.
I didn't. I wasn't told, baby. I saw it with my own eyes.
Let me ask you a simple question. Why do you think that Rabbi Marvin Heyer, who is the dean of the Simon Wiesenthal Center for Holocaust Studies in Los Angeles, says very simply, quote, there were no gas chambers at Auschwitz.
I don't know what went on. over there. I know what went on at Dachau.
Well, you know more than the head of the most aggressive Holocaust Holocaust study institution in the United States. You know
I'll tell you what, son.
You know more than the rabbis.
I'll tell you what, son.
Yes.
I was there. I walked through it. I saw it. I spoke to older people. They showed me pictures. I got the pictures. I got anything that Bob wants.
Listen,
I'll just
send
anything
me
you have
to
to
the
say.
gas chamber, and I'll send you a note about them. Maybe you're right. Maybe you know something I don't know.
But don't you sit there and tell all these listeners that you know so damn much about it when you haven't been there.
Listen, the thing is that I'm telling you that one of the major Holocaust study institutions in America, the dean of that, Rabbi Marvin Heyer, says you're wrong.
Oh, I am? I got a 36-year-old son that will stand here and tell you you're a liar.
One second. We're getting no place with this, Ann. I thank you very much.
Witnesses to come in and look at this, and the Katyn massacre was established as a Soviet massacre of Polish officers.
Fantastic. This is all irrelevant. This is all irrelevant to the question that the caller asked you.
The Soviet prosecutor tried to pin that on to the Germans again.
But again, this is all irrelevant to the questions that the caller asked you. He asked you to address some very specific evidence that was presented to the trial. Am I to understand your answer is I don't know?
He didn't say what specific evidence. The thing is, I can't address...
I beg your pardon. I could swear that he did. He mentioned 3 or 4 items, very specific items.
He mentioned Zyklon B, for example.
Right.
Now, the thing is that the Germans claim they used Zyklon B to disinfect the barracks and inmates of the camps in order to protect them from typhus-bearing lice and other animals. The Allies at the close of the war said that that the Germans did do that, but they used Zyklon B also to exterminate the Jews. So the story is that the Germans, when the Jews would arrive at Auschwitz, for example, they would be divided into 2 columns. One column, which would be sent to the barracks, were deloused with Zyklon B in order to save their lives, and the ones who went in the other column were sent to the gas chambers where they were exterminated with Zyklon B. And Zyklon B, by the way, is simply a pesticide.
Well, I guess we can assume from your figures that it's not a very effective one, since so many hundreds of thousands or millions of Jews died from these very diseases that it was supposed to be exterminating.
Revisionists claim now, of course, that if the Germans wanted to exterminate the Jews, millions of Jews, they certainly wouldn't have picked a pesticide that is relevant somehow to DDT. The Americans, when they went to Europe, had invented DDT. But that's not all, because the killings in the East, in Poland, in some of the camps, were allegedly done by carbon monoxide. An even more pathetic claim, for instance, is claimed that at Treblinka, almost 1 million Jews were exterminated from the exhaust fumes of a single motor taken from a single Russian tank that burned diesel fumes.
Well, it's also alleged that they were killed in buses and trucks that they were loaded into and driven around in, not just one engine.
Right. No. At Treblinka, one engine. One engine. You're talking about Belzec. You're talking about Sobibor. Now, the thing is that if the Germans were going to kill 1 million Jews, they had better ways to do it than to use the exhaust fumes of a Russian tank. But another thing is that if they were going to use carbon monoxide, which is stupid on the face of it, they wouldn't have used a diesel engine, since it produces only 1/7 of the carbon monoxide of a regular gasoline engine. The claims of the gas vans and the gas chambers at Sobibor and Treblinka and so forth are ludicrous on the face of it.
Well, maybe it could be explained away. Maybe it could be explained away by a madman stupid enough to think he could exterminate an entire group of people. Could also have been stupid enough to use a diesel engine. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, we would have.
Good as any, don't you think?
It's often said that Hitler ordered the extermination of the Jews. The revisionists ask for an order, any order, not only from Hitler for the extermination of the Jews, but an order from Goering, from Goebbels, from any colonel or major in the German army. None of this. There is no There are no documents to support any of this. These are just...
Gee, maybe Hitler worked just like Ronald Reagan and just kind of, implied and inferred to his underlings, wouldn't you think?
Well, it's possible, except imagine how insignificant the Iran business was in comparison to what people have claimed.
Yeah, that's my exact point. That's my exact point, Bradley. Since the Iranian initiative was so insignificant in its consequences, and they went to so much trouble to keep it from being linked to the big guy, maybe the Germans went the same way too. Will in St. Pete, you're on the air, WFLA. Hi, Will, you're on the air.
Hi, Bob. I'm hoping I can clear the whole matter up in 10 minutes, but that's, God.
You don't have 10 minutes, Will.
Yeah, I don't. Oh, good.
No.
Anyway, I was thinking, isn't there this problem that the people who are most close to the facts are most likely to either distort them or someone else like them is liable to come along later and say, I was close to the truth, I saw what happened. These people will...
American soldiers and the American airplanes bombing Germany with what the Germans did to the Jews. I only saw one, but I saw one concentration camp. Buchenwald.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no denying what went on there. They had men hanging on meat hooks. There was...
Did you see that with your own eyes?
What? I saw it with my own eyes. I was considered in the invasion forces, although I didn't hit the beach till D-Day +9, I think. I was a medic. And the first job I had was to drag bodies in out of the water that had started to decompose. I got a pretty good view of what the Germans had done to France. I was in England for 6 months, and I got a pretty good idea of what they did to England. I saw air raids that blew the legs off of the English Wrens, which was the equivalent to our waves. And there's no way in the world that I don't know what you're trying to revise.
But see, I'm not trying to equate, which is one of the words you used. I'm not trying to equate anything.
Well, I've been listening since a little after 12, and you said that some of the things that the American airmen did,
yes,
and what we did here and there, was such a terrible thing, burning babies and then dropping bombs and all of that. But the people in Germany had been warned. Eisenhower had warned them that they were going to be bombed if they didn't surrender. Now, you said before we should have sat down at a bargaining table and worked out some kind of a peace agreement and not demanded a surrender. But Hitler was in no mood for that. And well, if you were old enough, you would know he wasn't.
Yeah, right. Well,
I mean, he was...
the people who live... The people who live under the control of the state always suffer for the actions of the state. For instance, I don't feel... I was 16 years old when the Americans dropped the nuclear bombs on Japanese cities. I don't feel personally guilty for that.
Well, I don't either. In fact, I think...
The thing is, I don't claim, but the thing is, I want to point out the same thing for the German civilians and the German children. They were not guilty for the excesses of the Hitlerian regime, in my opinion.
Well, they they had been warned to leave the towns because they were told that it was going to be bombed.
That isn't quite how it worked.
Every step the Americans took through Germany, they were shot at all the way until they finally got it worked out. The bombs in Japan, they were an unknown. Nobody knew what they were going to do.
But how about the firebombing of Tokyo?
And they say the firebombs?
The firebombing of Tokyo, 140,000 barbecued
The firebombs were just what they were. I mean, they wanted to destroy they destroyed 2/3 of Aachen.
I'm sitting here listening to this, gentlemen, 1 second. I'm sitting here listening to this. I'm sitting here listening to this, and I hear an awful lot of moral equivalency type talk coming back and forth. But there's one thing that seems to keep sticking out. Bradley, it seems to me that your position is basically, the poor German people, we shouldn't hold them guilty of this, and yet at the same time you seem to be trying to make the American people feel guilty.
No, I just said, for instance, I just gave an example of that where I did exactly the opposite. I said, listen, I was alive when the Americans nuked Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I do not feel personally guilty.
Yeah, I know on that one, but then you brought up the firebombings of Tokyo.
These are actions, I don't feel guilty for that. These are actions of the state. These were incredibly brutal actions by the American state, and I'm pointing out not that they were equivalent of what the Germans did. All I'm pointing out is that this constant refrain of the Holocaust is used, one of the ways it's used by the Americans is to cover up their own barbaric acts against civilian populations in what we used to call the Axis powers. These were barbaric, absolutely barbaric, and the Americans used the American state and the American school system uses the Holocaust.
Did you ever hear of the American paratroopers that parachuted into Germany, and when they were captured, they ran a bayonet under their chin and hung them up on a rope?
Well, there was very little of that. There's a lot of war stories about that.
It went on in mass massacre, but the Germans had been trained by Hitler, who, in my opinion, was pretty close to a madman. And if he wasn't, then some of his underlings were. Goebbels was no big bargain.
I'm not here to defend the Germans. I'm not here to defend the German state.
They had been trained to kill, and that's what they did.
Well, you know, one guy doesn't train 60 or 80 million people.
Of any guild at all.
Yeah. The thing is that I'm saying something that's kind of narrow here. I'm saying that we've heard the orthodox view of